All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into something I think everybody listening can relate to, and that's fragmented time. Like those little bits of time throughout the day that we all have but don't really know what to do with.
Right.
Like the 10 minutes waiting for the bus or, 15 minutes before a meeting.
Mm.
Our source material for today's deep dive dives into the idea that we can maximize those little chunks of time, turn them into something productive.
Absolutely.
So we're going to be talking all about that today in this deep dive into fragmented time.
I love it. It's funny how we often dismiss these little pockets of time, but, if you really think about it, they add up to a significant chunk of our day.
Right.
And it's all about being intentional and making the most of those little moments.
Right.
Like turning them into opportunities for
Yeah.
growth instead of just, mindless scrolling or whatever.
Exactly. So the first thing that our source material dives into is reading. And they suggest using e-readers and apps
Oh, yeah.
to access short stories or news articles or, even like bite-sized nonfiction
Yeah.
during these fragmented moments. So what do you think about that? Like, is it even really possible to get immersed in a book, even for a short time?
Well, I think, it's probably not about trying to read War and Peace while you're waiting for your coffee.
Right.
But it's more about snacking on knowledge throughout the day, like getting these little bite-sized pieces of information or inspiration.
I like that.
Yeah, just kind of keeping your mind engaged.
Yeah.
Instead of, just totally zoning out.
So instead of reading War and Peace while waiting for your takeout, maybe you could explore a collection of short stories by an author you love or something like that.
Exactly, or catch up on some industry news. Something that you can kind of quickly dive into and then put down when you need to.
Right.
Yeah, and of course, there's always the option of carrying a physical book, if you prefer.
Of course.
But the main thing is to have something readily available that you can just pick up whenever you have a few minutes.
Yeah, and it's crazy how much you can accomplish, if you just dedicate even 5 or 10 minutes a day.
Yeah, consistency is key, right?
That's for sure.
Even small efforts can lead to big results over time.
So what other activities do you think would be good to incorporate into these fragmented time periods?
Well, language learning is a perfect example.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many great apps out there like Duolingo and Babbel
Uh-huh.
that offer these bite-sized lessons.
Right.
And they fit perfectly into these short breaks. So imagine using your commute to brush up on your Spanish or, learn a few French phrases while you're waiting in line at the grocery store.
Yeah, I love that because connecting the language learning to the real world.
Absolutely.
Instead of just memorizing vocabulary lists, you're actually starting to use the language.
Right. And the source material even suggests, using those little chunks of time to practice pronunciation. Oh, really?
Yeah, like mimicking lines of dialogue or shadowing a podcast.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
And I bet you could really impress your colleagues if, you busted out some, well-placed phrases.
Oh, for sure.
In another language.
Definitely.
So now let's move on to music.
Okay.
I think we all know that music can be great for relaxation.
Yeah.
But how can we use it for personal growth?
Well, instead of just passively listening to your favorite playlist,
Mm-hmm.
what if you intentionally chose music that could expand your horizons a little bit, explore different genres, different cultures.
I love that.
Step outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And, the source material also talks about listening to classic hits from different eras. Not only is it enjoyable, but it can also spark memories,
Mm-hmm.
broaden your cultural understanding,
Yeah.
and even provide insights into different periods of history.
Right.
And then, of course, there's audiobooks and motivational audio.
Right.
Those are for times when you might not be able to focus on reading.
But still want to learn something new or, get a little boost of inspiration.
Yeah.
You can listen to them while you're walking the dog, while you're doing chores.
Right.
And they can even help you tackle life's challenges. Like the source material talks about using audiobooks for stress management, for example.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to writing.
Okay.
The source material presents writing as a way to sharpen the mind.
Yeah.
Even in those short bursts of time. How do we actually do that, though? How do we use writing for self-improvement?
Well, again, it's not about trying to write a novel during your lunch break,
Right.
but it's about capturing those fleeting thoughts and ideas that we all have,
Yeah.
Before they disappear. So you could use the notepad on your phone to jot down reflections on your day or brainstorm solutions to a problem or even just write a few lines of a story. It's about, keeping your mind engaged and creative.
Right. And the source material actually suggests some specific writing techniques for utilizing this fragmented time. Can you elaborate on some of those?
Sure. One technique is free writing, where you just set a timer for like 5 minutes
Yeah.
and just write down whatever comes to mind without worrying about grammar or punctuation or anything like that.
So just like a stream of consciousness.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
great way to clear your head and uncover ideas that you might not even realize you had.
Interesting.
Another option is bullet journaling, which is, a great way to organize your thoughts,
Hmm.
create to-do lists, or even track your mood.
Yeah, bullet journaling is super popular these days.
It is. It's very versatile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've talked about reading, language learning, music, and writing. That's a lot.
It is.
But how do we actually connect these activities to like real life challenges? Like make them more than just distractions.
Well, I think that's where the real magic happens, right? Like instead of just viewing these as, hobbies or distractions, we can actually use them to gain insights and strategies for dealing with the things that life throws at us.
Okay, so give me an example.
Sure. So let's say you're facing a tough decision at work. Maybe taking a few minutes to read a philosophical quote about decision making,
Hmm.
or listening to a podcast about, overcoming adversity could give you a fresh perspective.
That's a good point.
Right. Or let's say you're feeling overwhelmed by a personal problem. Instead of, instinctively scrolling through social media, you could spend a few minutes writing in a journal about how you're feeling.
Yeah.
It's a way to process your emotions and gain clarity.
So it's like using these activities to build resilience
Exactly.
in a way.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, the source material also really stresses the importance of staying focused,
Oh, yeah.
especially in today's world where there are like distractions everywhere.
Everywhere you look. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so easy to just like pick up your phone and get lost in a sea of TikToks.
It is. It's a real struggle.
Yeah, how do we avoid that? Like, how do we resist those temptations?
I think preparation is key. Like take a few minutes each day to plan out your reading list or your language learning goals or, whatever activity you're going to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when you have those free moments, you don't have to waste time deciding what to do. You can just jump right in.
So you're saying like eliminate that decision fatigue
Exactly.
by having everything like prepped and ready.
Right. And I think it's also helpful to be mindful of your surroundings, like if you're easily distracted, try to find a quiet spot where you can really focus.
Right.
Without interruptions.
That makes sense. So
Yeah.
we've really explored how to turn those little bits of time that we all have throughout the day into opportunities for growth.
We have.
And by incorporating activities like reading, language learning, listening to music, and writing into those moments, we can really transform what might seem like wasted time.
Into valuable time.
It's all about perspective, like
Yeah.
shifting our mindset and seeing those little moments as opportunities
Right.
instead of just, blank spaces in our day.
I like that.
Yeah.
So as a final thought for our listeners, what can they take away from all of this? Like, what's the one thing they should remember?
Well, I would say, start small.
Okay.
Experiment with different activities and find what works best for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach here.
Right.
But the important thing is to be intentional and to make the most of those little moments that we all have.
I love it. Well, this has been a really interesting deep dive, I think,
It has.
into fragmented time and how we can really utilize it.
Yeah. And, who knows? Maybe we'll even do a follow-up deep dive sometime
Yeah, maybe.
where we share some more specific tips and strategies.
And we would love to hear from our listeners.
Let us know what you're doing to maximize your fragmented time. Share your experiences with us. And until next time, happy diving.
Happy diving, everyone.
Okay.